as a first time flyer, I didn't even know that they used to give people, they used to mine their water. So you know it's not this different. Hi guys. So I know that in my last video, the one I made where I told you guys, like the one I shared about our journey, like from Nigeria to Canada, I said I was going to share like the journey of how we moved, right? Like how we did like our traveling and all of that, the routes that we took, and yeah. But just before that video, I just felt like it was important to share the heart process, right, that led me here, that led me here, you know, and that made me sure like that I was supposed to be in Canada. So it's not so much about, oh, like what path should I take? Should I go through the student visa? Should I go through express entry, which was the one that my family and I did, right? Or no, should I go to spousal sponsorship? There are like a lot of routes, and in our next video, the one with my husband is going to share how we did it, because he was our primary, you know, applicant. But just before like I start going into all those technical details, I wanted to share the journey that actually brought me here. So I think I was chatting with somebody today, and yesterday, and she mentioned she was my roommate when I was in final year, how like I'd always known that I was supposed to, you know, travel out of the country. I think the first time like I knew I was in 500 level. I did a 6-year course, veterinary medicine, so yeah, I was in 500 level. That was the first time like I just knew it in my spirit, right, that I was not going to live in Nigeria, right, that I was going to travel. But how, I had no idea. So initially I thought it was going to be true, like I wanted to do like a master's, not necessarily because I like to study, but it looks like the most like realistic way of, you know, getting out of the country, right? And like I always knew that I was supposed to go, you know, the same way like we have the witness of God in our heart, like there's work to be done, you know, and I was supposed to be a part of it. But that process, that heart process, is what I want to share with you guys. And I think it all started yeah, it started like I knew when I was in 500 level, but it really started when I started serving. And so in my service here, there was someone I used to date. I think I've shared, you know, that breakup story with you guys before on Instagram, but I'm going to go all over it now and bring it back. So this story starts in 2018. It starts in 2019. I was dating this person. We are going to call him Emeka for the purpose of this video, right? And he came in my life Emeka and I met, you know, at such a point that like I was tired of dating the bad guys, in quotes, right? And he was a Christian, you know, guy, you know, he was also studying, or he had finished studying, you know, my course and all of that. And it looks like we're going to click, but there were a lot of things that, like, he's a good guy, like he's a great guy, and I'm sure like we should even still be friends. Just I've not spoken to him in a while. Like solid, decent guy, right? But I just never had peace, you know, about the relationship. I just knew it was wrong because we didn't really agree on like core doctrinal issues. He used to attend one of these core like doctrine churches. I don't want to mention any church name, but part of the things that we didn't agree on was he didn't believe in praying in tongues. He didn't believe that. And you know, I tried to do, I will change him, I will share sermons from our church, but really that's not anybody's work, right? It's the work of the Holy Spirit. And I knew in my heart that I was being disobedient, not because he won't make a great husband for someone else that they probably share the same doctrine, right? But because I knew what God had called me to, and I knew that teaching my husband God's word in that sense, or trying to convince him, you know, about some doctrinal matters, or like the security of the believer's salvation, you know, stuff like that wasn't exactly what God had called me to. But I was still in that relationship. Then I started serving in 2018. Both of us were living in the same city, you know, then, and like I pretty much felt like we could work because it was my first saved, you know, boyfriend, and I just felt like I was done with school, and I felt like I was ready to settle. He also was, you know, doing his masters, and he was looking at, you know, ways of maybe leaving the country. So by that time I was living in Ibadan then, and then out of the blues he just broke up with me. God, guys, I wanted to die. You know, this kind of breakup that your chest will be paining you physically. My chest was paining me. I didn't see it coming. Like, I really loved him. It was partly because of him that I redeployed from Akwa Ibom to Ibadan. And I got to Ibadan and Uncle serves breakfast on a platter barely 1 month after I landed. And it was just like really painful. I felt like all the plans that I had made, you know, in my head of us being together, just crumbled, like all the plans I had for my life. And it was that breakup that made me. And I remember, like, I was living in a 2-bed apartment then in Oluyole, and my sister's friends were around. They came to stay with me, and they had like been in my house, you know, before. And I remember, like, one of them calling my sister that Shobzi has been crying. I was just like a mess. I was just really crying. I was just like, before, guys, I used to be the one to serve breakfast. Do you understand? So you can imagine when they served me and I wasn't, you know, expecting it. And I was just like really crying. And I remember, because Emeka broke up with me, right? And I told God, I remember I was in a Mikra cab. I was going to church for maybe midweek service. That you see, this 1 year of NYSC, I'm going to dedicate it to just following you, just, you know, pursuing your heart. Not because I want a husband, not because I want to leave the country, but because I know that you are God, and if you are the only thing I have, then I have enough. And I remember I was in that Mikra camp, and I said, God, I'm going to give you this 1 year. I'm going to follow you this 1 year. I'm going to pursue you, right? And I went to church that day. And then over the course of my service here, you know, I served in Mokola. It's a veterinary hospital there, and then like every day or every other day I would go out, pray in tongues, right? And it was during the course of that prayer, and this point is important, guys. I would have like some words to come to my spirit, like confessions. I will write them down. So while my mates were gisting, right, in the doctor's office, I would go out into the corridor. You know, they had all these cobwebs, government, you know, facility in Nigeria. They really didn't take care of it. And then I will stay there, and then I will pray in tongues. I'll pray in tongues. I'll pray in tongues. And those words will come, I'll write them, you know, the words, and I started confessing them. And okay, so towards the end of service year, the whole question of, oh, what are you going to do after service year started coming up. Of course, my dad was asking, do you want to come and do a master's? My dad is a lecturer, he's a professor, so it just made sense that he wants to, you know, drag me, you know, in that direction. Do you want to come and do a master's? Do you want to? Yeah. And I think it was around that time, one of my uncles in the US now, Uncle Ibukun, and like he sent me money, registered for GRE. I registered for GRE. I wrote my GRE. I passed. GRE is like an exam, you know, to do masters, you know, in the US and in some universities in Canada. And I passed. And the whole idea was I was going to apply for a master's and travel to the US, right? But okay, yeah. So there was that. But towards the end, you know, of my service year, I started like having a strong pull towards Lagos, and I could not explain. I just knew that I had to be in Lagos. And I told my dad, and he was like, because how much were they even going to pay? Average veterinary doctor, when you graduate, they probably pay like 80K, you know, or 75K. And my dad was like, he didn't think like it was a good, like, I'll go to Lagos, we don't know anybody in Lagos. The people we know, they live in Yanokbaja, their house is going to be far from Ikeja, you know, where I was supposed to be working. And to my dad, it really didn't make sense. But I'd been praying, right? And I knew that I was supposed to be in Lagos. So an opportunity came, one hospital, Truth Miles, and they said that they were looking for doctors. In fact, the way it worked, they just called me that one of their doctors was traveling to the UK, that they need to replace her, that I should come for an interview. So I traveled to Lagos, went for that interview. They asked, how much do you want to earn me? So I said 80K. They said, oh, they cannot pay me 80K because I was a new graduate, that they will pay me 75K. And that's how I got that job, you know, on the spot, with nowhere to live, nothing. I just knew that God was leading me, you know, to Lagos. And my dad tried to contest it, but he just left it that, okay, in his mind, like, I'll give you this girl 2 years. If you do 2 years, collect that your 75K salary, you come back to UNAB and come and do, you know, your masters. I don't think I've ever shared, you know, this story before, but I've realized that my life has been a series of divine leading, you know, that has brought me not just here physically to Canada, but to this place, you know, to this assignment that I am doing. And I remember I wrote GRE then, and then because I knew in my heart I really didn't want to study, like I wanted to practice, right, treat animals and all of that. I knew that I didn't want to do a master's, so I tried to pick what I would like to do, not just an abstract like master's stuff. So I chose reproduction because I really liked like repro then, and I almost had a distinction in it, right? And I remember I submitted my application, and then they replied like months later. You know, it takes a while for it's getting that. They now told me if I had chosen another department that I would have gotten the admission, but because it was repro I chose, that I didn't get, because all the professors in that department, they were not taking students, they were going to retire that year, right? That they were even telling my uncle that if I had chosen pharmacy or pharmaceutical sciences, that's pharmacology, that I would have gotten it. But in my mind, I was like, there is no, I felt kind of relieved. Yes, I wanted to travel. Yes, I knew that God had called me, you know, to leave the country. But in a way, I sort of knew it wasn't supposed to be through that MSc, because it was something that I felt forced, right? It wasn't like me. Then, then okay, so back to, you know, I told you like I felt like I dedicated my life to God in that sense, like told God I was going to pursue him. Then I remember it was a prayer meeting we had in church, like I think it was like a few days to our anniversary, so we had like this 12-hour prayer meeting in church, and then we're praying, and then I just knew, like a word just dropped in my spirit that, you know, you're traveling, your master's is not going to work out, you still have 2 years to spend. And I said, God forbid. Say, devil, I rebuke you. You know me? Hey, what? I'm gonna travel and there's nothing you're gonna do about it. And but I knew, you see, that's the thing, when words drop in my spirit, I know whether I know that I say God forbid though, as long as it's not something outrightly like against God's word or God's plan for my life, like sickness or anything, I knew that it was going to happen. But in my head I said no, not 2 years. God has said that it is now, which God told me was now. I just knew I was going to travel, I didn't know how, right? And I was going to work out. So that happened, and then 2 years, and just like, you know, that word that I got during the 12 hours of prayer, you know, prayer meeting, they didn't give me admission. They said, oh, if you had just chosen another course, you'd have gotten it. But my spirit, I felt like, okay. So 7th year ended and I moved to Lagos. I didn't have, remember I told you I didn't have a place to stay. I just knew that God was calling me to Lagos. So I just called one of my friends then, or he said he had another friend that they used to work in the same office. I could stay with her. She had a 1-room and parlor, so I was staying with her in Ogba then. She gave me we shared 1 room, and then she had the parlor. And then I started working, you know, in the hospital, and I started working there. And it just didn't make sense that my father had a house in Abeokuta. I could easily be doing my master's, but I was in Lagos. I was earning 75k, and you know, I was working in a hospital and all of that. And my dad would call something, would say, Alpha or Kinikon, masters. There was even a time that they were recruiting in UNAB, and I said I should come and apply as a lecturer, and I went and applied. And every other people there, they had their masters, they were probably doing their PhD. They were obviously in that line, but me, it was just because it was a better job seemingly, but I didn't even get it, right? And okay, so I lived in Ogba. Then I used to attend like another church, but like in my spirit again, I knew that I was supposed to be a part of Celebration Church. But in my head, I'm like, no, I'm not going to Celebration Church. I even went once just to even see. Then there were a lot of people, young people. I was like, all these people will be snobs. Young people that were doing very well, right? And I was like, all these people will be snobs. Like, it was a big church. I grew up in a small church, so living there didn't even, like, going to that church didn't make sense. So I left and I didn't come back for another like 5 weeks. I was still going back to that church. But every time I went to that other church, I knew that I was supposed to be in CCI. So one day Shasha obeyed. Like, while I was still living in Ogba, and then I started attending CCI. And I remember the first sermon then was about the gospel, and God told me that, Eniola, I've called you like to preach the gospel. And I remember it's not seeming so grand in my eye, like, you have not called me to change the world. Why are you calling me to change, you know, to preach the gospel? But of course, as I would grow and realize that the gospel is what really is the power of God on salvation, and it's what changes the world. And then I started attending CCI. I was, you know, working in my job. And for you to know that the devil is a stupid devil, and it's not like I was obedient. A few months when I started attending CCI, I started getting involved with this guy and got involved with him. In fact, I feel like God had mercy upon me, because if I had dated and married him, my life would have gone like in the opposite direction. And it was like just few months before I met my husband. And I remember that day I was going to decide whether or not to spend the evening in his house. And there was Bible study, there was midweek service Wednesday, and I felt like God took my hand like this and pulled me out and sent my in-law church. I literally like walked to church, because church wasn't far from where I was working there. Like, I felt like God's hand take me, like literally walk me out, because I didn't want to go. I wanted to hang out with him and all of that. And I felt like God's hand walked me, like he took me by hand and led me out. Because while I was walking out of that place, I didn't feel like it was myself. I strongly believe that if I had stayed that day, I won't be here today, like, to tell this story. And then, okay, so I started attending church, and a few months after, I felt led again to go and ask my boss for an apartment. So before that, they had given the apartment to one doctor, but after she left, they didn't give anybody again. They just closed the place. But I felt like I was supposed to be in Ikeja. I was supposed to be living in Ikeja and join Ikeja map. So I told that, I didn't even tell the person I was living, because I was splitting the bill half. I didn't even tell that one. So I went to meet, I prayed in tongues. My other colleague advised me against that. Don't, that if you are the resident doctor here, they're going to use you the way, like, yeah. But I knew that I was supposed to be there. So I went to meet him. He said I should not worry, that he was going to give me, he shall, like, I refurbished the place, he shall join hands, help me refurbish the place. That's why I started living in Ikeja. So if you watch the video of how my husband and I met, you will know that we met in Ikeja map. He was the lead of the Ikeja map. If I had not moved to Ikeja, I wouldn't have joined the map. I wouldn't have had like any course like to get his number. So but when after I joined the Keja map, then I met my husband. I will link the video up so you can, you know, watch. And then my husband and I met. And I remember when we met, part of the things he talked about was, oh, he knows that he's called to leave the country. I was like, oh, same, oh, that, oh, I feel like I'm supposed to be in Canada. Before it was the US, but that didn't work out, right? The US I was trying. And I was going to like go through this express entry route. I told my dad about it when masters didn't work. I sent my documents to West. We had paid for West, like to verify. In our next video, my husband and I will talk about that process if you want to, you know, apply through the express entry. And the only thing that was left, in fact, I paid for my IELTS, like when he and I met. And then we met and he said, oh, like he feels like he's supposed to be in Canada. We started the application in 2019 and we didn't even get our visa until October. Yeah, until September this year. That's like 4 years of waiting. But we knew that God had called us to go to Canada, not the UK, not the US, not Ghana, not Togo, and we're supposed to be in Canada, and we waited it out. And we'll talk about that like in our next video. And like I met my husband in church in CCI Ikeja, you know, to be specific, and then we started dating. And then as time went on, we got married. We got married after 10 months, did our court, and then he added me, you know, to his application. So I just wanted to say that like I knew that God, I mean, and this is for anyone who you feel like God is calling you to leave Nigeria or, you know, to leave the country, but you don't know how, and you're trying your own wisdom. I knew that I was not going to be in the country, and I tried what I thought was going to be the pathway. I tried the masters, it didn't work out, and I tried doing my own application myself, it didn't work out until I met my husband. And if you look at it, 2018 was when God told me I had 2 years left. Then in 2020 was when I got married. And I feel like if I had come in 2018, then it would have been a different story. I wouldn't have been married, I wouldn't have a baby. Do you understand? I would still be doing veterinary medicine instead of content marketing that I'm doing now. And not like really being in like the core of my assignment. I wouldn't have like really been in the core of my assignment. And I just wanted to share, you know, this hard process of following God day by day, journey by journey, trusting that he sees the end from the beginning, and if he has given you a word that you're going to travel or you're called to the nations like I am called, he's going to literally walk you through that journey and deliver you from evil. And that's what, when Pastor was teaching this thing about Chronos and Kairos, and he mentioned like that 2019 August when I met my husband was a Kairos moment for me. I am so sure about it, because I could have not been in Lagos, right? I could have still been living in Ogba, and I would not have joined the Keja. It was such a crucial moment, because if not for the fact that he and I met and got married, you would have had to go to Canada. You would have had to come to Canada ahead of time, like without me. Do you understand? So it was such like an important moment. But we trust, I just want you to encourage you, right, to trust God to lead you. If he has, like, you know the destination, you know where he has called you to, but the journey might not be exactly like as straightforward, right, as you want it to be, and it might not be the way you thought, you know, that it will work. You might have to go to the UK first. We knew that we're not supposed to go to the UK first. So even after like our express entry was delayed, COVID delayed it, then we got married, had Rere, then that delayed it. We waited for almost 3 years to get our visa, and we knew that we're supposed to be here, and we waited until we got it. Right, just following God. Yes, I just wanted to share that if life doesn't seem to be going your way at the moment, if you felt like that terrible chest pain that I felt when Emeka broke up with me, you know, in 2018, just follow God. And I just think I should reiterate this. When in 2018, after like that breakup happened, and I told God I was just going to follow him, I didn't follow him because I know that I'll get a husband from following him. I followed him because of God. I wasn't trying to get anything out of it. And I mean, and now I have God, right? I'm working with him. I'm in purpose. I'm doing what I know that I should be doing, creating content, both, you know, for you guys and in the business space. I have, you know, and because God is a good God, and when you truly seek him above all things, he will add every other thing to you. I have a husband and I have a family that I always wanted to have. And to top it all, we literally like moved to Canada a few days ago after waiting and after trying different ways to get it. So I just wanted to share this with you guys ahead of like the how we relocated video, because it's not so much in the how we did it as much as it is in God's plan for your life and how he wants you to do it. And I hope that this is really, you know, helpful for you guys. Okay guys, so my next video we're going to be talking about how we relocated our express entry, West, how we did our West, IELTS. So I actually ended up not doing IELTS because my husband had done, right, and he just added me to his application. I collected my money back. IELTS, and then proof of funds, and then the scores and all of that. So I mean, my husband is in a better position because he was a principal applicant. So in our next video, I would like share all of that with you guys. Let me know if this was helpful to you. If you know anyone going through this, maybe you've applied for different masters you're not getting, just send it to them and tell them to trust God, you know, through the process, because it's not so much about the destination. Because even in Canada, you will still need God. It's a beautiful place to be. Do you understand? But you will still need a relationship. It's not going to be the solution to all your problems. You are going to still have problems, you know. So let God groom you through that process. Let him develop your field. Let him help you grow, right? And you'll be better for it. Bye guys. Thank you for watching.